Okay, so we absolutely have a beautiful indigo vat here. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually get rid of this flower, which is well in the way, by pushing it to the side. The flower is actually what shows you that the indigo is really reduced and ready to die. So like I said in a previous video, when the indigo is blue, it does not have a property to attach itself to your cloth. But when it's actually white indigo, which in fact is, in the case of hydrosulfate vat, green, then you're ready to go. So I'm going to show you, if I have here somewhere a little spoon. I'm going to show you some of this indigo, and it's a beautiful light color, and this will give you a great dye. Okay, so we have a piece that we prepared earlier with some resist, and it's been sitting in water for a little while. So that's just to help loosening the fibers. And what you want to do now is actually to dip it into the vat. Now, for those of you who have read extensively about indigo vat in loads of different social media, you're probably scared at this stage to touch the bottom of the vat. But can I just reassure you that with this type of indigo, there is no sediment at the bottom of your vat. So you can touch all you want. It's not going to make any difference in your dye. However, what will make a difference is if you are, once the piece is in, if it floats at the top, or if you're taking it out, every time you are injecting some oxygen into your vat. So you don't want to do that. Once it's in, it's in. And we're going to go for approximately a couple of minutes. This is pre-reduced indigo. It's very, very dark right away. If you're working with natural indigo, sometimes you have to go several coats, several dips before you get the right color. But with this kind of indigo, it's quite quick. So I'm now going to put it in, and I tend to just plunge it in very slowly, and then I will maintain it underneath the water. Now, a lot of people just at this stage just plunge their hand into water, and all it does is you end up with a lot of indigo on your gloves, which is completely unnecessary. You also create a lot of movement in the vat, and you add a lot of oxygen into your vat. So just the tip of your fingers, that's enough. The piece obviously is wanting to come up to the top, so I would prevent it from doing so, because every time it comes up to the top and it comes out of the vat, you will end up with some kind of line, because at the very moment it touches oxygen, it starts oxidizing. So if you have something that you're trying to dye very flat, like a great big piece of fabric or a scarf, by letting it come up to the surface, you will end up with some marks. So I think it's better when you start a new technique just to learn how to do it really right from the start, as from the beginning. And what I would do is prevent it from coming to the top. So while I'm talking to you, I'm kind of counting in my head just to try and get to a couple of minutes, which is probably what I would give a piece of this size. This is quite small. If I was going for like a large piece, a couple of days ago, I indigo dyed a very large dress. I have lots and lots of loose cotton, then I would leave it for longer, but 2 minutes seems to be quite a good timing for this. I will pop it out, oxidize it, or leave it to oxidize, and then I will decide if it's going back in for a little bit. So what you have to also realize if you are a newbie to indigo dye is that the wet piece of cloth is darker than what it will be once it's dry. So it may just be a good idea not to decide before your piece is actually dry, just to leave it oxidize and rinse it and then dry it, and then decide to start with. And then you will develop the ability to know, once you get your piece out, to say, yeah, okay, that's dark enough for me, or no, I would like it a lot darker than that. So I think this is probably okay for now. I'm going to extract it, and here comes the who and ha, because for those of you who haven't indigo dyed at this stage, when it comes out, it's not blue. It's actually a kind of luminescent green, and that's just normal. That is the indigo being very reduced. Once it grabs some oxygen, it will start oxidizing and it will start turning blue. Only when it's blue, you can plunge it back into the vat. If you are putting your piece back in when it's still green, then again, you are injecting a lot of oxygen in your vat. So be very careful with that. Okay, when you are taking this out, you don't want to be dripping in it. So gather as much as you can in one corner, and then crush it a little bit, wring it underwater so that when it comes out, you don't end up with a lot of drips into the vat, and that's it. And look at this. It's beautiful and it's not blue. So that always creates quite a lot of interest when I run a beginner's class. But as it goes, it will turn blue really quite quickly. You're probably noticing there are quite a lot of marks on it, and that's quite normal. That's just the little bits of the flour which is on the top, which has soiled your cloth. This will wash off when you wash it. All those marks are actually made by already oxidized indigo. And if you remember what I said, the oxidized indigo cannot attach itself to the cloth. So although it's sitting on top, when you wash it, it will disappear. Now, can you see as I'm talking, this is getting darker and darker. If you wanted to speed up the process, you could just plunge this into water, because remember that in water, a big component is actually oxygen. So we can do this just now because we have this handy little bowl just next to me. It's actually warm as well. So I just have to find something interesting to say to you while I'm doing this plunging. It's not necessary to do this. You could just wait for natural oxidizing, and I always recommend that you maybe use water every 3 times. Give a chance for the indigo to actually oxidize by itself. But if you have to over dye several times, then maybe rinse once in the middle. And the color is shifting really quite well, so I'm going to show you this. I hope you can see how kind of quite dark it's getting now. Yeah, so that's quite different from the green. If you move the sticks just a little bit, you can see the white underneath. So that helps when your resists are really very nicely tight. But if you lift up, you can see that in fact underneath it's not oxidized yet. So I'm probably not going to take the resist out right away. It still needs to be oxidized. Now what I tend to do when I indigo dye is I prepare all my pieces, I dye everything, I leave everything to oxidize naturally, and then only I take the resist out or I go back in, then I rinse. So here you go, that's pretty dark now. Now, just for the purpose of these, I'm going to take the resist out just because I want you to see what happens here. But normally I would probably wait a little bit longer. Now, once you've rinsed the loose indigo off, you can actually take the resist out, and you shouldn't get any marks on the white part, because whatever is left is actually done. Look at this. This is beautiful. And then the second one. And finally, the third one. And the fourth one. Here we go. And if I open this, so at this stage I can take my gloves off, because whatever is left on the cloth is not going to stain my hands. And we just open this, and we have still green because it's still oxidizing, but we have a really, really nice pattern. So here you are. I think that's a big result. Big well done. So I hope you get the chance to try something like this. I think it's very cute.